Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I'm here again with Joe. How you doing, Joe?
I'm all right, Perch. How are you?
I'm doing well. We have the pleasure today of talking to author Pat Chan. How are you?
You guys, thanks for having me. I'm good. You know, it's 3 p.m. here. It's morning for me, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, Pat and I met too long ago at this point. That's all these stories. Everything happened too many years ago now.
Yeah, good decade or so.
Yeah, at what was it? It was a comic shop on Jericho Turnpike. It was Collector's Kingdom.
Collector's Kingdom.
Wow.
And the amount of stories that have happened in there, you know, I had some beef in there a couple of times too. It's a legendary story.
Yeah, it is. It's no longer with us, but yeah, that's where we met because you were signing at the time. You were big shot at Zenescope.
Yeah.
And you were doing Robyn Hood, I think. The first trade of Robyn Hood was out by then.
That's right. What it was, I think we did a signing that was it was promoting the trade and also doing a single issue event for the Unleashed event.
Yeah. So but your big sort of initial break in comics, you did a 2-page Angel story for an IDW anthology.
Yeah, that was my dream come true. You know, I had I'm not even sure how many people know this, but before I was writing comics, I was doing theater and stuff. I've talked about that before, but I was running this blog called Buffyverse Comic Reviews, and I was a pretty well-read blog about the Buffy and Angel comics, and that that writing about them and interviewing the creators and editors was how I got into that. Yeah.
That's a lot of people have taken. A lot of people in comics today were writing a blog or working in the news sites, whatever, kind of being, and then they're able to kind of take that step in. Was it what you wanted when you actually did get to start writing comics? Was that leap a good one for you?
Yeah, in the past I probably would have said no, because the truth is, I didn't, as a reader growing up, I would read some comics. Like, I remember my uncle gave me this shoebox, and in it was an issue of Rocketeer, where there were some interesting sexualities for me as a kid. There was a big oversized creep show. It's almost like a trade, but it's just creep show by Stephen King and art by Bernie Wrightson, and just amazing work there. So that stuff I loved, but I wasn't really interested in superhero comics back then. But it was one series that I liked, like Buffy, Angel, and even Supernatural, those became comic books too. And my first thought, I'll be real, was, why are these creators going to comics instead of novels when novels are going to be more widely read, But I was intrigued, so I read Joss Whedon's Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 8, number 1 at Dark Horse, and I started to read some of the Angel and Spike stories at IDW, and I was taken by the medium and how it was this marriage between TV and prose, but also its own unique beast. You could do things in comics that you couldn't do in either one of those. You could You could set the pace as a writer, and the reader could also counter and set their own pace and take in certain things in the image. So it's more, TV is just the pace is dictated to you. Novels, the pace is 100% the readers. Comics, it's this unique kind of like tug of war between reader and writer, and that was very interesting to me. So it was that discovery of the of how unique the medium was that did make me interested in. And plus, I mean, Angel as my first gig was a dream come true. That was my hope. I tried very hard to do it, but for it to happen was crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like we got to bring this up since everything's been going on. I too was a big Buffy fan. I watched it from episode 1 when I was probably slightly too young to really be into it and watching it weekly. But hey, and I followed that. I excitedly was picking up Astonishing X-Men, like when that came out, when he came into comics, and there's obviously been a sea change in Whedon's perception in media, not just because of allegations here and there, but even before that, Age of Ultron was like a turning point where it felt like fandom kind of started to turn on him. So tell us a bit about like what Whedon kind of means for you then and now, what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, it's odd. Oh, my thing is on. Sorry.
No worries.
It's odd to see it happen so quickly because, I mean, it just goes to show how fickle culture is. And this isn't talking about the allegations. This is what you're talking about in how the perception of him as a writer changed before even any of that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I remember tweeting, and this, he has a very rabid fan base, Zack Snyder. But this isn't my opinion of Snyder. I don't really have much of an opinion of his work. I've seen it, and Batman vs Superman. I don't love it. I don't hate it, and that is not allowed. You have to have you're either a diehard or it's the worst film of all time. And that's not me. I didn't really enjoy aspects of it, but I like that he tried, that he stretched, but he didn't seem like someone that everyone thought of as like as a singular voice. He didn't seem like someone who people talked about it in the same way as Whedon, Aaron Sorkin, David Chase. He wasn't among those names, I thought he was kind of like reviled among the comics community, and I felt almost alone in not hating him. I thought that everyone hated him. I thought he was okay, and there were a small group of fans that loved him, and that was it. But that isn't the case. I tweeted that I couldn't believe. Do you guys hear Hoyt?
Okay.
I tweeted something to the effect of that it's hard for me to believe that we're in a state of media where people look at a film and they want less Whedon and more Zack Snyder. That isn't an insult to Zack Snyder's fans, but that to me is the epitome of how much we've changed.
Oh, absolutely.
Whedon was seen. He was seen as this like superhero god. Like when he did Avengers, when he was signed on to the it was insane. It was insane. There was, it was as if like the nerd writer who was seen by the nerds as this amazing artist was finally being recognized by the mainstream. And then it was the nerds though who turned on him, and who decided that no, his content isn't good. His dialogue is bad. It's cheesy. His depiction of Captain America bad, and it was almost as if it was overnight. I don't know. Quick. What it comes down to too is there are certain moments where you could see where the cracks started, and it was at a time when Tumblr was at its height, and if something went viral on Tumblr, it was almost as if the same way things become part of like the discourse on Twitter. That started on Tumblr, and there was a whole thing on Tumblr about the scene in Age of Ultron between Bruce and Natasha, about how she was a monster, and people read it as she was a monster because she couldn't give birth, which textually is not that isn't something that can be taken away from that. You have to project that onto the scene. That isn't in the scene. She's talking about because she's a killer and relating to him that he also loses control and hurts people.
Yeah.
The idea of her not being able to have a baby is in the conversation, but is a separate point to that, which Whedon also clarifies, but people just didn't believe that. They took the controversial interpretation, and that is what I believe began to be the turn of the perception of his work. And it continued when people read the script of Wonder Woman and compared it to the film. And it's very interesting to watch as a writer because, tastes change. That script wasn't like some kind of like ancient discovery. That was being read by celebrities on stages for a long time. Yeah. Everyone knew what the story was, but people's tastes and sensitivities changed. And that to me was the fall of Whedon pre the current deeper fall of Whedon. Yeah.
It's true. It did happen so quickly. I mean, if you had told people back when Whedon was announced, I think he showed up at Comic-Con pre-Avengers, that at one point people would be begging Zack Snyder to come in and erase what he had done. I mean, people would have thought you were insane at that time.
Absolutely
crazy. He was like the rock star for a while. I mean, Perch and I did a retrospective on Astonishing X-Men some months ago, and that first issue of Astonishing X-Men sold better than Hickman's first issue of X-Men. Like it was huge. It was huge, and it was steady, and it stayed pretty high like the entirety of the run. He was able to transcend all that up until very recently. It was a very popular meme with Firefly, and people constantly referencing that, they want more Firefly and, all that. That was, I mean, still people do that, but it used to be like a lot bigger even. That was a very popular April Fool's Day joke every year that would always go around, would be that they're going to bring back Firefly.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it was a big announcement when Boom took Buffy.
It was. And Boom's buff. I mean, Boom's whole Whedonverse, it's very interesting now to see how they're going to handle that, because Boom, less the company and more the creators, are very, historically vocal, progressive creators who always feel that the need to say something about everything, comment on everything, put out your statement, and it's going to be interesting seeing how many of these people stay on Buffy,
Yeah. I mean, and we've seen, I think, a few creators, not going to point out any specifically, partly because I can't recall off the top of my head, but some creators involved in Buffy at Boom have already at least at least made some blanket, like we acknowledge, like what's going on kind of thing. Part of this, though, which is the case of a lot of other works, is Buffy isn't just Whedon. There were a lot of people that worked on that show, a lot of actors and writers and people behind the scenes that, you don't also want to erase their contributions.
Of course.
You shouldn't. It happens, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, as much as, for example, Charisma Carpenter's story is, that's awful. What she talks about. She also never made it a point to say, stop watching Buffy and pull it and don't watch the biggest piece of my career again, because that's, no matter what happens, that's likely going to be her biggest contribution to pop culture. I would think a lot of the people involved in Buffy, that's going to be their biggest contributions to pop culture.
Yeah, it's odd because there's a difference too between what you see on Twitter and what the real life actuality is.
A big difference. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, huge. There's almost no overlap. If Fox were to bring back either Firefly or Buffy with no Whedon involvement, they'd have a rude awakening of how people really feel. People, the audience doesn't feel how the small percentage of creators who tweet feel on Twitter, and that that showed to be true with James Gunn. James Gunn, he wrote these jokes that that he was fired for, and that that there was a stretch of time where people who now would defend him now that he's been vindicated wouldn't take the step to defend him on Twitter because they'd be scared of being associated with a bad joke for their own brand,
Sure. Yeah.
And but the audience quickly proved how little they were interested in Guardians 3 without James Gunn,
Right.
Yeah.
And he's back. And I think that we're going to start to see a lot more of that, where these companies, because let's be real, we celebrate these companies when they fire people,
Right.
SNL fires that comedian that they hired, celebrate them. This company fires this person, celebrate them. The Star Wars thing, I know that some lady was fired. I don't know what she does because I don't watch The Mandalorian, but they're celebrated. And the truth is this: if the audience embraces that actor, the company is going to be in trouble for firing them. If the audience hates the actor enough that they support the firing, the company will feel vindicated.
Yep.
Companies firing people like the Mandalorian actress, that's not going to have that big of a wave because most people don't know who that person is.
Yeah.
She's probably famous on Twitter. She's famous with Star Wars fans, but the general audience doesn't know who that really is, right?
Yep. Right.
So once these companies start going after bigger names, it's going to be a problem for them to try to fire or deplatform people like say for example, God forbid, but Taika Waititi, who does Thor Ragnarok, right?
Yeah. Right.
Say horrible tweets came out from his past.
Yeah,
they're going to have a very hard time firing him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you got to imagine most people, because Twitter, by its very nature, encourages people to put out hot takes, uninformed takes, and sarcastic takes on a regular basis, and they all those three of those things tend to age very badly.
Yeah.
So if you really start going through the microscope of everybody's stuff, you're going to find something on nearly everyone, and then if you start acting upon it, I think you're absolutely right. It does not work. The people who are your customer base are going to go, wait a minute. I think Gina, right, is the Star Wars actress.
Yeah, Gina Carraro or something. Yeah.
I mean, the reality is, and I know this will make lots of fans of her angry, perhaps, is that she is a supporting character in a handful of episodes for that show. That's not going to rise to the public consciousness. If they had fired if they had fired the main actor, it may not have even mattered because you could slap somebody else under the helmet and on you go. Most people who are just watching that show on Disney Plus are not going to care. Even if the core Star Wars fans really care a lot, if the 80% who just want to watch something on Disney Plus and veg out, it's not going to matter. So it's an interesting. I think you're making a good point, and it will be interesting to see the next several years. I do think it's turning pretty aggressively now back in the other direction.
And to follow up too on a point you brought up, I forgot about that SNL guy they fired until you brought it up again. And I remember it all now. I'm thinking about it. And if you brought that up to someone, they'd have no idea what you were talking about, even if they tweeted about it 50 times. You could they'd be like, what are you talking about, guy that got fired from SNL? You tweeted about this dude 50 times in 3 days. They'd be like, I don't know what the.
Yeah, that's very true, because there's this need to comment on things that you aren't actually interested in. Like for me, I'm very interested in comedy, so I know who that comedian is more than I know who Gina from Mandalorian, because I'm not really interested in Star Wars, but so that I'll remember that. And I'll see how, that kind of thing is weird, because when an outside audience is the one that's most angry at you, I'm not sure if that's helpful or hurtful, because, that comedian could have had a good run on SNL and made good checks, but there are people who are going to be more hyper aware of him in the comedy world than they would have been just a new SNL cast member, because who knows anyone on SNL who isn't Keaton Thomas, Pete Davidson, or Michael J? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There's no one else. You know?
Scarlett Johansson's husband's on that show.
People. Yeah.
I mean,
but
it's a weird time where, like, you know, it's how can I say this? It's interesting watching tastes change so quickly with Whedon, but it's also, you know, we don't know how this kind of stuff works long term. Like, honestly, could something like this help someone who is fired? Like, I bet.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because you know, the actress on Mandalorian, Gina, I know about her being fired more than I know about her role. I couldn't tell you what she does on that show. I know that she's an actress who was fired on Mandalorian for tweets that I read that were insane. You know?
Yes.
And I know that, and I know Baby Yoda. That's it. Those are the top Mandalorian stories for someone who doesn't watch the show.
Yeah, you've encapsulated Mandalorian down very well. Yeah, the woman with the crazy tweets and Baby Yoda.
Yeah, so that's what people who don't watch the show are going to take in. So now she has this familiarity, but also at the same time, you know, it's a double-edged sword because she could benefit off of it. But if she said something that's truly disgusting, why wouldn't they fire her? You know?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, or even if it's a case of, which I think is the case in this case, because there are people pointed out, hey, it's unfair. That seems to be the crux of the irritation about firing is like, hey, but her coworkers are saying other things that are equally crazy, and why aren't they getting fired? And the answer is, you work for a giant billion-dollar corporation, and you put a spotlight on them because of something you did, and fair or unfair, they fired you. That's nobody likes to really hear that, but that is how these things work.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And what you said before about how hot takes won't age well. Do you know what I noticed is what I like to do personally is if I'm interested in a new topic that I don't know much about, or like a show or something else, like for example, my wife Amy and I started watching this show called Pen 15. It's a great show. I'll go to Twitter and I'll type in Pen 15 and see what people that I follow have been saying about it for the entire length of the show. You know, I'll just sort by people that I follow and I'll see. And what I've seen, that kind of thing, is I've seen that many people will delete old tweets, which leaves these hot takes that are part of a larger conversation free of context.
True.
So you'll go back, and it'll look like someone is saying something that's just out of pocket on something, on a topic, but the context will be deleted, you know, so you won't really get the benefit of the doubt there because everyone that you were talking with has deleted their tweets, you know? So yeah,
absolutely. I think I agree with something you said there that I do think in some cases it helps or it can help. I would be unsurprised if, for example, Gina can go out and land a role where it's entertaining in some sci-fi film or whatever, bit part, whatever it happens to be, things will come back. I think I would argue perhaps James Gunn had a strong career, but Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was not amazingly received. It's certainly not like the first one. And perhaps this whole situation that happened to him did help rally some people to his side ultimately and get support. He's now doing Suicide Squad and it put up interest to Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I don't know. There's a world where perhaps this helped.
Yeah,
it's very true. And I think that the few people that you see, the small percentage that is tweeting on Twitter about all this stuff, forgets that the audience at large loves a redemption arc. You know, I mean, just
that's true.
For example, look at the most popular actor in the MCU, Robert Downey Jr. You know, he was fallen out of grace in every way possible, and then he became Iron Man. And
there's a joke in the season 11, episode 1 of The Simpsons. It came out in like 2000, and the whole premise is it's all about how amazing Mel Gibson is, and then they make a joke about how awful Robert Downey Jr. is in the episode.
See, yeah,
like that. How times have changed.
Very much so. That's one guy though. Mel Gibson's gonna have a hard time coming back.
Yeah. No, that's yeah.
I think so. I agree with you. That said, that trailer dropped. He's in this movie where he's like an angry Santa Claus or something.
Mm-hmm.
He's got something new out, and I was surprised that people were like, "Oh my god, I got to see this. This looks great. Perfect role for him." And
he's probably always going to like. He's entered that like Liam Neeson phase of his career where he's just going to be in these like low budget action movies that will always make a profit because they're like $10 million, $20 million budget movies that like half that budget is paying like, you know, Liam Neeson, Mel Gibson or whatever. And they'll make $40 million or something like that.
Yes.
I think he wants,
yeah, 100%. Because there's what I think is not being discussed. You know, the different sides of this, the extreme left and the extreme right, go back and forth on this thing about cancel culture. You know, the extreme right thinks it's this thing that's happening all the time, and the extreme left thinks it's happening to no one. But the truth is that, you know, say Joe, old tweets of yours that were the same way robbed of the context of conversation were discovered, and you were quote unquote canceled, right? That would affect you in a major way because there's a different reaction based on how known someone is. You and I will be affected in what I believe is the same way. Someone like Mel Gibson, there's a floor to how much he can be affected because
that's true.
A percentage of people don't care. So Mel Gibson, what he's lost is he's lost the ability to be a real leading man. But do you think that he's going to get roles, you know? So what's not discussed about canceling is that it doesn't affect major celebrities how we think it does, but it affects smaller creators more than we think it does. And there's not that nuance of conversation there because, you know, it's a politicized thing when really it's not really political. It's more just different people interpreting something happening in different ways.
I mean,
I completely agree with you.
It's weird that it's such a big disconnect because you'll see some of the same people that say cancel culture doesn't exist. It's just, you know, taking responsibility for your actions, and those same people will then have like a tweet that goes viral and they're getting yelled at and they're like, I can't take it anymore. I gotta get off Twitter. I gotta mute this thread. People are being awful to me and stuff. It's like, are you know? You seem like you missed something here.
No, I do. It's very frustrating, and you hit the nail on the head in that what it is that we've politicized these terms so much that they become tribal. Like someone hears cancel culture, and that is a term that the right uses. And I think that you and I actually had a conversation about how I'm trying to think of the exact word here.
We have one about virtue signaling.
That's what it is. The right uses the term virtue signaling, and the left uses performative allyship, right? And they're the same thing. And both sides, the right thinks that the left is corny for saying performative allyship, and the left thinks that the right is wrong for saying virtue signaling. That's the same concept, and we've allowed ourselves to be politicized so much that we can't really see that. That's the same concept.
It's disturbing how, and I'm so glad you laid it out like that because it's literally gotten to the point where we're creating new words for the same stupid thing because we hate the other side so much. And it's like, you could just use the same word. It's okay.
You can also keep it simpler. I mean, in the world of comics, not to completely bring us back there, but there are comics that are just flat out on the surface. Any editor would tell you it's not well written. We didn't spend a lot of money on the talent. You switch artists midway through the book, maybe 3 or 4 times. There's a lot of parts there that are just broken in this comic. But we're going to say this comic is woke because we want to use a label like woke to kind of attack it. But you could just say, hey, it just is, it's a broken book. It's not this isn't a good read. The story goes nowhere. We don't have to assign political terms to it. That just, in many ways, just lights up a fire to get people arguing about something that really isn't very good in the first place.
Yeah, I think that it's, it's beyond politics. Probably we take on these terms that are more comfortable to us. Like, the truth is, like, if I heard someone that I hate that's been cruel to me saying a term over and over again, and I hadn't heard the term elsewhere, I probably wouldn't want to use that term, you know. So I get where it comes from, and also we use what's more attractive to us. Like, for example, the left values allyship, so that becomes performative allyship when it's a negative thing, you know.
Right.
When the right is more worried about like what's happening to them, so they say we're being canceled, you know. It's
right.
So they take on these concepts that are the same but more fit, you know, what they're worried about. I mean, for example, what you said about that book where it has different artists throughout. When I was at Zenescope, if that happened to a series, like say a one shot, we had a problem with an artist, we have to hire one or two artists to finish it up. We might call that book an artist showcase. You know
there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
It's all branding.
Yeah. And it's very much that. So I think that the problem arises though that when like say one of us were to say canceled, someone might put upon politics, they might assume that we have politics that we don't have, and that's not fair, because not everyone's going to see the nuance in those two things being said by different people, or not everyone's going to agree that they're different because they're objectively not different, right? So like say for example, if I saw a friend of mine being unfairly canceled, I would have to think to say, oh, he's not being a performative ally because of this, rather than he's not being canceled because of this. Because if I say canceled, they would think that I like voted for Trump, which is the last thing I would fucking ever do. You know?
Immediately. It's all about it. It's making these assumptions. I watched Jimmy Palmetti make a comment, which I think is a truthful one, saying, "Hey, comics are too expensive, and you're trying to get young kids into comics, and if you're charging $5.99 for it, that's a problem. That's a I don't think that's a very political statement, or even a any kind of.
No, I can imagine how it would be.
Yeah. Yet it was he got pummeled of being, that's a right-wing talking point that comics are too expensive, because that's part of the war. Like, do you say comics cost too much? You voted for Trump. That's the level of stupidity I think this has all gone to.
That's crazy. Yeah, because I remember saying something like I forget who it was. There's an artist who said this. There was an article on Bleeding Cool where an artist who I didn't know was associated with Comicsgate, they were reporting on him saying that the customer is king in comics and that you must do what the customer wants. So I quote tweeted the article and I said that is anti-art. That's wrong. It's the creator's vision that must be followed. That's how you create art, is to go by your vision. That's why you're the artist. The customer doesn't dictate the story. You tell the story, and if people like it, they like it, period. And I tweeted something like that, and I got replies like, the customer is king. It is a Comicsgate idea. And it's like, all right, but I said that I don't agree with that. Why I have to,
it's all stupid. It lacks balance. I mean, so I'm a retailer. I've sold comics for many years. The customer is king in a sense. If you're a retailer trying to keep a shop open, absolutely, the customer is going to give you cash. You need that cash to survive. At the same time, that doesn't mean that an artist sits there and just has to basically say, "Tell me whatever you want. I'm going to start drawing it." They need to have a creative vision. They need to follow that, because that's where you're going to get the best work out of that artist. And sometimes the best work of that artist does not line up with what the customer wants, and it doesn't sell, and then the book doesn't continue, and that's called, maybe great art not finding its audience. That happens all the time as well.
Oh, yeah.
And that's separate from. It's not this black and white. Everything the customer wants has to be true. And no, the artist just doesn't go off in a hole and does whatever they want either. There's a balance here. If you work for Marvel, you're not going to just randomly one day draw Spider-Man with a third arm because you feel like it. That Marvel won't let you do that because it's their IP, their character. That's, but this whole conversation gets very polarized to very, very limited points of view where people just stop listening to nuance.
Yeah, that lack of nuance is difficult because the conversation that we just had, if we had that in text on Twitter, there'd be people upset that we didn't specifically like pause to say like fuck Comicsgate, because the thing is like I don't ever talk about Comicsgate, because to talk about something like that, in my opinion, is to promote it because they want that.
Well, it's also, I mean, I've said this a few times because at various times I've been called both sides of it, a member and not a member. I'm being completely honest. I have no idea who the membership is at this point. It's a lot of different people, a lot of different ideas. And if you're telling me, hey, saying comic books is too expensive is a Comicsgate talking point. Yeah. I don't even know what to tell you at that point. Comics are too expensive for little kids. I'm going to continue to stand by that. You can label it whatever you want, but I'm not going to play that game. It's just a silly game. And people want you to constantly have to inject this fuck the person I don't like into the middle of your conversation. I just have the conversation. It's stupid.
Yeah, because what it is, that is performative allyship, because that's not a genuine statement. What it is, it's a shield. Right. It's, I want to say this, but to say it and that someone won't perceive me as this, I have to shield myself. So what it is, it's cowardly.
It absolutely is cowardly.
Yeah. I mean, dude, if you read my writing, you know what I feel about things.
Yeah,
sure.
If you know who I am, if you follow me, you know what I lean toward. You know my values. Mm-hmm. I've never felt the need to say every time. I don't want to remind people of my core values every time I speak.
Frankly, to the customer's case, the customers who are paying for your work and enjoying it and wanting to read it don't want to be reminded either. They just want to see your vision. That's all.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I was having this conversation on a different podcast too, where like I like the idea of putting the work out there and not commenting on it. Like I don't want my Twitter to be just talking about my work all the time or about comics, period. Like I would love if my Twitter was just full of jokes, full of cat pictures, and occasional, my book is coming out, you can get it this way, I don't like having to be wrapped up in having to comment on all this stuff when really my politics is that I feel that if I comment on something in a negative way, it's so divisive out there that comment is itself promotion for the thing that I disagree with.
And it often is. I mean, the dirty secret here for everyone, and whether it's politics or comic books or anything else, the titles that get a lot of complaints, and I'm not mentioning creators by name, so there's been plenty of creators who have had many videos and podcasts and tweets and everything written about them. They've sold more. It's promoted that stuff, and vice versa. I mean, there's a lot of people who go out and have very negative YouTube channels that part of the reason why they have the subscribers and the viewers they have is because they're getting attention for it. So everybody is just feeding each other in this case. It is a game.
There are absolutely creators who have gotten deals off of the amount of traction they have gone from people having mean videos about them on YouTube and mean podcasts and things, like 100%.
I've talked to somebody firsthand who absolutely got the job because there's some very popular YouTubers out there trashed them for months on end, and they got work. So, I mean, thanks. I don't.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's true. Their name is in the atmosphere, said over and over and over again. And I mean, like, the negative side, like, I know people, and I'm friends with people who get a lot of negative videos made about them.
Yep.
And I personally don't like to see it, and I personally, it's annoying to see, but at the same time, if that video has 85 views,
sure,
what is me talking about it gonna do? Get it like, double the views? Like, what did they say? Let me go check, and then that video is boosted in the algorithm. Like it's not helpful. It's not helpful.
No, it isn't. Not. And
it isn't at all. It gives, if you truly dislike something, don't give it more airtime. You are just prolonging it. So if it's truly something that bothers you, you're just going to continue to bother yourself. But also it seeps into this very phony way of talking to each other. And I the amount of people that I absolutely hate what you described, that interrupt the middle of their tweet to say, oh, and by the way, fuck Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Buddy, you're talking about gardening. What are you even doing? Why?
Yeah. No,
I hate all the politicians pretty equally. I think I've established that.
Sure, yeah.
They're all terrible. But I don't want to insert that into every thread. I'd be a maniac if I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very frustrating because, like what you just said, someone could take that clip of what you just said,
sure,
saying that you don't want to say fuck Donald Trump, and me like laughing and smiling, like, oh, they take that one clip, and then we look like, but
absolutely, that is the
context, and people have to choose to remove the context,
right?
And I feel that where that sort of insert that, oh yeah, fuck this thing that I don't believe in, that is almost like, it's that shield from someone trying to remove context. And my thought is just like, remove my context, then I'll remind you what my context is,
Yeah. You're reminding that that clip from was it Arrested Development, where Job is talking to the newscaster and he goes, and don't edit this clip so it sounds like I'm saying I killed Earl Milford. I love that.
I could talk about this all day because it is irritating, and it really sums up Twitter in a nutshell. But I got to ask to kind of take us back full circle.
Yeah.
You think Joss Whedon comes out of this?
Oh yeah, no doubt. He won't have the same audience. It'll change, but it's the truth is this: most people who consume his work don't even know about it.
It's true.
It's just true. They don't know about it. And, if they knew about it, would they care? Maybe. But the truth is that we have a very different perception of what's going on in entertainment from being on social media so much as people involved in all this stuff, involved in comics. We see the conversation happening at its most intense and at the most, the smallest percentage of the conversation is what we see most. And most people who would turn on the TV and consume his work, they just flat out don't know about it. So I think that is how he continues, is that what is going to be a bit different, though, is that he's going to, and already has gone from someone who is in demand for actors to work with to someone who actors will now feel a possible burden if they work with him, because they'll worried about being seen as someone who endorses what they perceive as an abusive work environment.
You need to put up that shield.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But and to further that point too, it seemed like Joss was entering that phase of his career no matter what happened. After Age of Ultron, he started getting into that position of it was going to be harder for him to get big work anyway. I think between that and Justice League, even if nothing happened, just because Justice League was a perceived bomb, that was he was already on the outs, and it was going to be a comeback story no matter what. So
yeah. He shouldn't have taken Justice League. I mean,
no. Yeah.
It stuns me that he did. The announcement for his work on Batgirl, back when that was happening, it was more well received than not, but there was still some kind of backlash to it, But with Justice League, what he did was take on a project where his, it's like Diablo Cody. When she did Juno, her voice was praised as so unique, so new, so fresh. Yeah. And then when she did Jennifer's Body, people began to make fun of her dialogue because it was it was such a specific tone. The characters, the dialogue was stylized. They said things that they wouldn't say in real life. It's the same of Joss Whedon's work. He has a certain cadence, a certain word choice. For him to add on to a film by Scott Snyder, whose voice is in every way the opposite. What a bad choice! What a bad choice! It makes the lines that people would have already been making fun of, because that's just how culture goes. You know, you like something and then you turn to make fun of it.
Yeah,
it makes his style stand out so much more, and that was a weird choice for him.
It just makes you flash back to the 90s and how ridiculous everyone looked then, making fun of how everyone looked in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
That's constant sport. Yes,
like people in parachute pants being like, those people with their shoulder pads look ridiculous.
It's very true, because the thing is this: when time goes on, the past becomes this blob. You know, we'll see the style of Buffy as not too different from the style that they're making fun of in Buffy. You know, like for example, Happy Days, right? That was a period piece.
Yeah.
Looking back now, no one would know that because it looks like it's made at the time that it's taking place in, and it's much further from it is now than it was from that time.
Yeah.
And
the technology didn't change as much between the 50s and the 70s to the 70s and today.
So, very, very much.
Yeah.
That's true, because we see the past blend into this whole thing. So Whedon's style, you know, he's adjusted it somewhat. Like the dialogue in Avengers isn't what it was in Buffy, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, the dialogue in Buffy was great, and that it was specific to him though. But it's that specificity that people do turn on, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like people
that are popular. I mean, you guys both remember Kevin Smith being he had a similar arc of being very, very hot, had very stylistic movies.
Yeah.
I think that Jersey Girl comes along.
Yeah.
And I remember lots of articles like he's done, the career's over, God, he's so annoying. But now, I mean, people fall.
Kevin Smith is very similar. I think I even commented on the astonishing retrospective we did that, like, Joss Whedon's almost like the PG-13 Kevin Smith. He was the more accessible Kevin Smith, because Kevin Smith did a similar thing where he was the nerd that made it, but he still had a smaller audience than Joss. He was still a more edgy, a more adult themed, and was never going to be the kind of big success that Whedon was, but he was still a massive success in his own right.
Yeah.
And very similar things happen with Kevin Smith in terms of like eventually at some point that cool Gen Xer who was that kid that made it turned into the stuffy white guy who just likes old Batman comics, and why do we still give him the time of day?
Once upon a time, believe it or not, he just had to be old. In the early 90s, a lot of conservative Republicans loved Michael Moore for how he was exposing things. There was a time.
Yep.
You may not believe it now, but promise, things change. But
it's like this. Like, for example, people make fun of Bendis's dialogue. I feel that if you're a writer who someone could say, I could write a paragraph of dialogue, and I could write it in a way where you know that I'm doing Tarantino, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If you're a specific enough writer to do that, Tarantino, Whedon, Kevin Smith, then you will have the audience sour on your style. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
It's just how it is.
In fairness, I made fun of Bendis' dialogue plenty, but yes, your point is
no.
It is.
No, for sure.
I think when something is new and fresh, you get excited about it. I also think comic companies tend to lean into it harder than they should, so they burn it out maybe faster than they need to by overexposing it. But then, I mean, what's popular yesterday? People again that bash on Bendis forget that in 2010, kind of around that time period, he was the hottest thing that was going, and the Avengers was great. People were asking why he couldn't take over everything.
It's true. And I actually had a conversation to bring it back to Zenescope with Ralph Tedesco about this, and it was talking about, like, because I was exclusive to Zenescope back in the day, but I haven't like sworn off working with them, and I was just talking to him about like when would be a good time to to do something again. And I was saying that it would have to be the right thing. We would have to agree that it's the right thing, because the truth is that, it goes both ways. I wrote for Zenescope so much that on my end, I was perceived as the Zenescope guy. That's what happens to me. And then on Zenescope's end, the truth was that I was writing at every point during my time there. I was writing at least half their books and editing the other half. So the truth was that for about 4 years, every Zenescope book, for the most part, sounded like me, and that isn't healthy for a company, and that isn't healthy for me as a creator. There has to be a break, and that's what happened with Marvel and Bendis. Is that every Marvel comic, even the ones that he wasn't involved in, sounded like Bendis, because he was the one who was pushing the main narratives forward. Everyone referenced his books as what's going on. He does Secret Invasion. Every book's impacted. In some ways, every book began to feel like Bendis, and that sort of overwhelming thing is what people begin to get tired of. And I want to, in my career, try to not really tie my boat anywhere, and not to because I felt there was this Prison Witch Volume 1. It starts with my dedication, and it's to Raven Gregory, who was also the staff writer at Zenescope before me. And I said something to the effect of, we're now free from our prison. And the prison wasn't Zenescope. Zenescope gave us work at a time when no one else was. Zenescope was great for us. The prison was the fact that we had these exclusive contracts where we had to do a certain amount of books. We had to not do other books. Now we're free to be full creators and not tire our voice on one kind of concept. And I think that is in this kind of industry where we are made to incentivize the idea of signing to Marvel exclusively. That is a huge goal that many have. I think that a much better goal is to have books at Marvel, but also have books at DC, Image, Aftershock, if they're still around in the future.
To give people more of a scope of exactly how much it contributed to Zenescope, approximately how many books do you have a credit to then in those 4 years? It's well over 100, right?
Oh yeah, as writer, at least 200. As editor, I've never counted. Because I was relatively hands off as an editor over the writers. What I would do is I had influence over who we would hear pitches from and who we would try to hire. I would always give my 2 cents. We hired Jeff Massey. He's a great writer who did the second and third volumes of the Oz books. So many. Probably if you take into the like 300 or more, I'd say 300 or more.
Yeah. So you had your hands in hundreds of Zenescope books, and you went on to pass that. Oh well, before we even go to that, you were the primary creator of, at least on the writing end, of Robyn Hood, right?
Yeah. What it was this. Zenescope had the character design. They had an idea for Volume 1 and a full outline for Issue 1. What I did was I wrote Issue 1 basically as is, and I pitched my idea for how Issues 2, 3, 4, and 5 would go, and that was taken. And then Volume 2, 3, and the whole ongoing series. That's, I think a total of like 39 issues. I outlined and wrote the whole thing. Yeah.
Now that's a lot, and that's a character that's still used, right?
Yeah, that's there've been multiple writers. It's been Latoya Morgan has written for them. She's the screenwriter who has done work on Walking Dead.
Nice.
I think that now Joe Brusha, who actually he's one of the founders of Zenescope, I think that he's writing it now.
Okay, yeah,
very nice. Zenescope's a company that keeps the companies doesn't get tossed out commonly with a lot of the indies, but it's been a very consistent, stable company for quite a while, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, they had their I think it was last year was their 15th anniversary.
Yeah.
15 years is crazy. It's
in this business for sure.
Other small publishers have come and gone in that time.
Oh, very much so. I mean, there's it's very interesting to see how Zenescope really succeeds, because the truth is that the most vocal creators in the comics industry on Twitter don't really know what Zenescope is. Ralph Tedesco, he put out this tweet talking about
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, to me it was great. You know, he opened his eyes and my eyes that people assume in many ways that Zenescope is the cover, is pornography, you know?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that's not true any more than that, you know, if you look at every Marvel exclusive cover, what happens on that cover doesn't happen in the book, you know?
No.
What Zenescope does is they've tapped into two markets. They have the narrative market, you know, people have been following their books for a long time. But what people don't realize is that there's a collectible art market, and that people collect these covers, and they'll grade the covers, and it's almost more similar to trading cards than it is comics. People will just buy and resell the covers at a marked up price, and Zenescope succeeds that way, in both ways, because people, I mean, it is, but it's not seen that way. It's not seen as smart. It's seen as they're limiting their audience, and that is, I have to be 100% real. That's what I thought in the past. I always talked to Ralph and Joe, like, can we please stop doing the sexy covers? You know, it's not helping us broaden our audience. But what I didn't realize that I do now is that if you cut that out, not only do you not broaden your audience because people already have written you off, but you lose a market that you have a vice grip over, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And my understanding of how Zenescope works has been broadened in my time away from them as writer than it was back when I was writing for them.
Do you think that, because you hear, and it's a popular topic today, we've got to grow the market, we have to find new readers, we have to do more, is a common talking point. But it often feels to me, and I've talked about this in the past, that they're not growing the market, they're moving the market. Like what you just described would be, let's stop doing those covers to get new readers, but it's unlikely you'd get those new readers. Like I said, they've been written off. So you're actually moving and or shrinking your market. You're not growing it. And so a lot of these efforts, so it's like, well, we need to go find. We talked to Jeff Thorne about this same topic of like, we want to find new readers for these comics. Great. So we're going to put out something that's going to appeal maybe to a completely different demographic, like a 13 to 16 girl audience. Great. That's somebody we know actually they have money. We want to get that money and we want to grow those customers. But then if you're shipping those comics to the comic shop where those customers aren't there at the moment, then you aren't growing the market at all. You're shrinking it because you haven't opened up any new channel to actually find those people. Maybe, it's why DC's having a lot of success with a book like Primer, which is a brand new character, over taking some of their existing properties and trying to reorient them for a completely new demographic, because that completely new demographic already knows what Poison Ivy or characters like that are. So it's weird to them to see them reimagined, whereas a character with a blank slate they can adopt to and it does well. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, yeah, you are. It's like this. How I feel is that they have such a balancing act to do. They have to appeal to the people who already love the books.
Right.
Who have always loved these books. That has to be the core audience. But as the audience ages up, you need to not only create a new pathway for other people to come in that doesn't alienate the core, but also that new pathway has to lead to a bridge to the core.
Exactly. Which is hard. This is people I think underestimate that is a really hard job, and it's not It's not as simple as like, hey, let's de-age Batman and everything will work itself out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there has to be the idea too, like, not everyone who goes with that new pathway in is going to become a Batman reader. But, like, for example, who I think is bringing a bunch of new readers to comics is, and I might say her name wrong, but it's Raina Tagelmeyer, you know?
Yeah.
Raina Tagelmeyer, yeah.
Not only bookstores, but also comic shops full of her stuff.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah, increasingly, especially,
yeah,
you know, if they're near schools. I mean, it's a case. I keep my eye on a lot of the other comic shops here in the area. I'm friends with a lot of the other retailers, and it's if you have a comic shop near or in some kind of pathway to a school or a mall or someplace where those people are, then you are stocking Dogman and Raina Telgemeier and Babysitter Club and those books, absolutely, and you're putting them in your window, so you're hoping that new traffic will spot it and come in.
Yeah.
Yes. And the truth, though, is that when that reader gets older and wants something in comics that they love, that is going to be not identical in tone or anything to Smile, to her books, but they're probably going to head more toward manga. You know, manga has, you know,
exactly.
There's wider content there.
Yeah.
You know? It's a much wider market, and I think that comics should take a look at why they only really greenlight a story with supernatural elements. Like, why does it have to be only sci-fi, only horror, only action? What is that? It's very unusual that there's not this idea that comics isn't a genre. It's an art form, the same way that the TV is an art form. Where is comics, The Sopranos? Where are these books that are great, that go on for a long time, that don't have a twist at the end? Oh, they're all mutants, you know, like
yeah.
Like Marvel and DC already do that. They have to sort their own shit out, you know?
Well, yeah, and I love what you're saying right now, because it's a bunch of, first off, it's that bridge you were talking about earlier. I don't think people understand how to build it. It's also, I think, what we were talking about much earlier, where in some cases going to find this new market, it feels like people are doing that through the lens of Twitter as opposed to the rest of the world. Like, so, and the answer is there. I've done these videos, perhaps annoyingly. I've been called Comicsgate for this, actually, where I just walk into a Barnes and Noble with my phone and say, check out the Western U.S. comics here. There's 4 shelves of them. There's no consistency. There's the spines are all over the place. You can't tell what's going on. And then again, your Barnes and Noble in the U.S., there's like 20 shelves of manga. It's dwarfing at this point the U.S. comics. And the manga shelves are nicely organized. You can go and see any kind of series. You can see 1 through 20. You know where they begin. It's like it's not even a race right now. In fact, manga is putting there. I'm noticing little icons on the cover that like indicate if it's a superhero book or a romance book or a sports book. Like they are just removing all barriers to finding these new audiences, and it's like the answer is right there.
It very much is, and I think that what you said about the romance and the sports, that's key. That there are genres that are major in manga that flat out don't exist in comics.
Right. Yeah.
They don't exist. Like honestly, Kickstarter, right? I've seen like maybe in my entire time kickstarting comics, I have seen a good amount, like maybe like 4 or 5 romance / sports books. They smash it.
Yeah,
people love it, and that isn't reflected in the direct market. It's just not.
It's not. And when people seem like they say, okay, we need to play in this space, they make very strange choices. Like, okay, let's relaunch Spider-Woman, but make it a romance comic.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? That's you get the benefit of nothing. The Spider-Woman audience isn't going to like it. The romance audience is wondering why you're trying to sell them Spider-Woman. It's like, what are you doing?
That's very true. It's there are audiences that are thirsty in comics for a book that they want to read. Like, for example, I just did back in December. My wife Amy and I did a comic called Thirsty, and it was basically comic book erotica, and that was our biggest campaign by a huge mile. Huge.
I can imagine. Yes,
and that's because it's a few things. One, it is that people don't want to go into a comic book store and ask for that kind of a book. Number one.
Sure.
Two, Stepan Sejic came onto the scene, did Sunstone, Top Cow's best-selling book of all time, ever. And then who followed in his footsteps? Mirka with Unnatural and some of her other work. And no one else. Maybe Money Shot, kind of, a little bit, but not really.
Oh, you're so right. You're so right about this right now. Yeah.
How is Top Cow getting their best-selling book of all time, and people are like, "Oh, that's interesting," and do nothing? Nothing.
No, it's absolutely madness. There are very popular books that are manga titles that Shueisha's putting out or other places that are like based on. Like the premise is a soccer team and the business mechanics of how a soccer team is run. And it's one of the most popular books. And if you're looking or what goes on in Europe with Asterix and some of these other titles, there's very different genres out there. And for whatever reason, it seems like we're stuck in this constant circular loop of we're going to do the same stuff. And then we're going to radically try and change it, but we're going to change our existing properties, pissing off everyone. And we're going to do it in the lens of what maybe a handful of people on Twitter are telling us to do. We're not going to listen to the market. And meanwhile, it seems like Scholastic and manga are just running away with it now.
Yeah. It couldn't be more true. That's And when people do try to kind of break out, it ends up being the same kind of a book because comics hires the same kinds of creators over and over and over. It's like when a comics creator breaks out and tries something that's new and different, it's like, oh, what if we do another comic about a band, a rock band, Yeah. It's like, hey, guess what? Rock bands next to don't exist anymore.
Yes.
I don't listen to rock music anymore, really.
No, it's you're right.
Joe and I have joked about this. Do you see as well? Like, I mean, and I'm Gen X is so part of our personality is joking about things that were uncool when we were kids and ironically making fun of it today. It feels like that's a whole subgenre now of pulling things from like the late 90s and early 2000s, but rather than make fun of it like you're supposed to do, they're suddenly trying to revere it to these properties. It's the weirdest stuff. I don't know.
I can't believe that too. Yeah,
it's very strange. It's like the pitch is take a sci-fi and put it in the 80s. Take a superhero book and put it in the 80s. It's like, all right, so that is somewhat of a natural response to Stranger Things in some ways.
Sure,
but that isn't what I look at and think of Stranger Things. I look at Stranger Things and I think, oh, I can't wait to know what happens to Hopper. I love this character interaction. The 80s is the backdrop when so many comics creators have 80s as the entire story.
That's the main character. It's not Stranger Things. The reason why it works, and from Dustin and kind of his facial expressions and everything else, it's character driven drama and tension. Yeah. And then the 80s, because would Stranger Things have worked if it was set in the 70s or the 90s? I think if you have the same cast, I think it would have. It really doesn't.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I think so too.
But the comic book pitch becomes it's like a checklist, and it's a dumb checklist. Oh, that's nice.
That's cute. But oh wow, up close.
I love it.
She gets very concerned when I talk as what she perceives to be alone. Yeah. She'll come and check.
That's a good natural instinct.
People who are listening to this on podcast, there's a wonderful cat in the picture right now. My dog, who's not with me, likes he'll do the same thing. I'm talking into the computer, and suddenly he wants to bite the computer and wants to know who the people are. So,
that's understandable.
So I want to ask you this. It's completely kind of 180 from what we were talking about, but maybe it will kind of relate. It's not a good segue. You've written a lot of books. You have worked for Disney doing books. You've worked for Marvel. You have a new book coming out for Disney actually soon.
Yes. Yeah, it's Disney Villains Portrait of Evil.
Excellent. And how is it? How you kind of touched on it right at the beginning that why wouldn't you want to steer toward books? What are some of the kind of core differences? You spend so much time in comics now. You're also doing books. I know a lot of comic creators want to do books and kind of are struggling to get there. You're playing in both fields. What's the difference there?
The difference, well, you do feel more alone in that. I've done novels before. That's the ultimate alone, where the experience for the reader is, it's just your words. With Disney Villains, there's a lot of artwork, and there are elements like there's a mirror in the book that you can look at and kind of play with. So the storybook kind of stuff is almost more halfway comics and halfway prose, but the experience in writing it is much more similar to just prose, because with comics, you, as much time as on the dialogue, you spend breaking down the page. Panel 1, this happens. Right. The characters should be wearing this, having this expression, et cetera, et cetera. You really direct the comic book, with Disney Villains and books like it, like I did Spideyography, where it's Peter Parker's journal. It is very much the main content is just my words, so I feel alone in that. What I submit has to be much more the final product. When in comics, when I get artwork, I'll change certain things. I'll hone the dialogue. I'll fine tune even plot elements over the artwork before I'll have our letterer, in most cases Jim Campbell, do it. But in Disney Villains, for example, what I submitted to the company had to be, my final vision, and my interaction with the artists was much more going like this. Like I'll write the entire page, and the story is basically someone who has aspirations of being a Disney villain, goes through the history of Disney villains, and tries to understand where they went wrong, why they're legends, that kind of stuff. So it's like this like villains manifesto pretty much, and it's told from his perspective. So I pretty much got into his point of view, and I looked at these villains, how someone who wants to be like them would emulate them and want to take from them and learn where they went wrong. So what I just wrote all that as one big block, and then I would write a very small suggestion like, on this page, it would be cool if we could see, like, for example, Captain Hook, maybe he has his hook close to his chest, and you can see the reflection of the alligator in his hook. So something like that, where it's almost like I'm doing cover concepts more than actual narrative art. So you remove the narrative from the art, and you're fully in control of the narrative, and the art is more decorative. So it feels more alone as a writer. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Man, that's interesting. Is there you've done work with the Marvel directly and Disney directly, right? I think in both camps. Or is it Marvel through Disney? Yeah.
It's unusual in both areas. It's been Marvel and Disney separately through a third party company. Like the Marvel novels that I did through Joe Books, and Joe Books was the publisher. And they licensed the Marvel titles. So my interaction with Marvel was with, I think, Sarah Brunstad. She was pretty much the one who would speak for Marvel. Because I would get notes like, you can't use this, this, and that. And we don't have beer in the Marvel universe.
It's a terrible place to live.
Jesus.
Yeah.
All right, hang on.
They didn't figure out how to ferment like alcohol in the Marvel universe.
Well, Tony Stark probably just drank it all,
That's fair. Yeah.
The truth, though, is that most of the notes that I got from Marvel were just trying to keep it in line with what they do, whereas
Right.
and that's true of Disney too. The only major note as far as like story that I got from Marvel was in my Thor novel. It's Thor: Crusade of the Forgotten, and I had a storyline where I used the tracksuit Draculas from Hawkeye, Matt Fraction's Hawkeye.
Yeah,
and we were on our third draft, and we got the note that we can't use them, and I was like, "Fuck! Oh my god, dude!" It was so I had to go in and pretty much surgically remove them from the entire story, and what a nightmare, But most of the notes were much more like the lines of, we have to be sure that Tony knows that his action here won't kill this character. In the fight, he has to hit them in a way where it explicitly says that he's hitting them to hurt, not to kill. Like that kind of a thing.
That's interesting. Because of course, in the movies, Hawkeye's just shooting arrows everywhere and impaling people, but in the comics,
now,
more true. Oops.
I want to dive in here since I know you, Pat. You have some what people might refer to as hot takes on Thor. You prefer some of the earlier Thor movies compared to Ragnarok, and I'm not trying to get you canceled or anything, but
no, dude, let's go. And what's so funny is that
these bleeding cool articles right now.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel this in multiple ways. My opinions on pretty much everything, I'll evolve with new information, but I have my values, and I have what entertains me. My opinion on Thor is now looked at as very different, because I was crazy in the past and I'm crazy now for different reasons. I remember it was Icon, the final Icon. I was there. Yeah. It was a pretty fun show. I was on a panel with Peter David, and I remember saying that Thor was the funniest character in the Marvel universe. And Peter David goes, "Thor is funny?" He had no idea what I was talking about, But the dichotomy of this high character in this low setting, Earth, this very mundane setting, it's perfect for humor, right?
Yes.
Thor is not funny really in Asgard. He's a guy in Asgard. Here, it's funny, Another funny, right?
Yes.
The first two Thor movies are retroactively treated as if they aren't fucking hilarious. Those movies are comedies.
Absolutely they are.
And they're now treated as if they try to do this like dead ass high fantasy thing, which they really didn't, And it's like, oh, Taika brought humor to Thor. It's like, nah. Thor was funny from the start. Now Thor is fucking corny.
Yeah, I'm so with you.
Like from the opening scene, like Thor, his dialogue when he's chained up and spinning around, it was like an SNL skit, and SNL is not funny anymore. It was, he's Taika. I mentioned him before when I said tweet, because he's someone who I feel is very well liked, both as his content and as a person. But me, as a person, he seems like a very sweet guy. But content-wise, I can't stand his writing.
Yeah.
I got two different directions I want to go simultaneously. By the way, I completely agree with you. It feels like the humor got dumbed down to a point where it's like when somebody the comedians, they tell you the joke, or they tell you a joke, and then they want to they tell you that they're telling you a joke. Like they have to sandwich the joke in between. Like, here comes the joke, and here it is, and now I'm going to explain the joke to you. It's like we just tell the jokes. Just goddamn it.
Yeah,
that's what those movies, and frankly, a lot of what the Marvel universe it seems to have evolved into. It's like they want it really like, we're being sarcastic here, right here. Like we got to put subtitles saying irony with a little arrow pointing to, to Darcy. Like, hey. But the other thing you said there, it's it is. I'm stunned. It's possible to like a person and then maybe not enjoy something they write. That's something that you can do.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't know from Twitter,
Sarcasm.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Like, for example, I probably shouldn't even say this, but like, everyone thinks that like John Mulaney is a great comedian.
Sure.
I find that I can't stand his work. I think no one was funny, but he seems like a nice guy, and he seems like he's a likable guy. So I feel I don't look at his stuff and go, oh, how can anyone like that? I go, oh, I don't like that, and that's okay. I don't want him to not be able to work because one guy doesn't like his shit.
Yeah, you sound like someone who works for Delta Airlines.
Why?
Yeah, that was one of his bits, is that Delta was very mean to him this one time.
Oh, gotcha. See, yeah, I haven't seen enough, but I did watch the new special, and I got about halfway into it, and it just sounds like some guy who thinks that the transatlantic accent is very funny, and that's really it. Like the joke there's like no real content to the joke,
No, I got it.
There's lots of, but I mean, I'm old now. I mean, I've been going to cons for 25 years at least, and there's lots of creators who I'm very good friends with, go drinking with, enjoy their company. They're fun people. I will always help them out. I want them to have work in the industry. I won't read what they do because I hate it, but I like them as people.
Oh yeah, I mean that honestly, I have to be real. That is most of the comics industry for me. Like, well, it's almost like a 3-pronged thing because the work, I don't always enjoy it. It's a very special comic for me that I really like it because I've, it's work for me. Like my work is my art, but reading other comics, like it's like working out for me. So I cannot like the work. I can love the person from our personal interactions, but I can also hate who they are on Twitter, Like, what I resent about Twitter so much, it's like, I would have loved to know, to not know that most of the people who are my peers and friends in the industry are fucking bullies, Like, I don't want to know that, dude,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I've got it. Well, I might as well irritate all the new people that came over here. I love John Byrne's art. I absolutely like what he does. I think he's a good creator. I think he's very clever with what he draws and everything else. That said, he's got a reputation. It's not all positive, and it's like I would be happy in my life never knowing that, just enjoying his comics because I enjoy them quite a bit. Vice versa. There's a lot of current writers right now that I cannot stand what they're writing, but I think they're nice people, and I hope I don't want them to starve. I want them to continue to get work. Please don't ever make me read your comic.
Yeah. It's so strange how personal people take their taste, I remember Joe, this I might have told you already, I'm not sure, but I got an email a while back about my work on Stitched from Avatar. Now, I was worried that I was going to get heat from the left because Stitched Terror, I came into the story. The villains in that are set. They are it all comes from a conflict that was happening during the Iraq War. In Garth Ennis' original story, the villains are terrorists, and I strove to try to paint a very nuanced picture where the villains in the story were women, a gang of women that fled from that area at a time when the first Stitched was happening. And so I was like, all right, so I'm a bit worried that people won't see the nuance here, but it is what it is. I have to create, And then the email that I got, I was fucking floored. It was from some super conservative guy who said that I was like a cuck and because he couldn't stand that the opening scene was these women criticizing the men in their lives. And what I have to say is that the men were the Taliban. You
know what I mean? Embarrassingly, by the way, the first time somebody called me a cuck, I was assuming they were trying to use Wolverine's Canuck and were shitty at spelling. So that's later I'm like, oh, you were saying something else. I see.
That's great. Oh, and two, like that's one of the words too that, like, you know, I learned cuckold as an insult in English class. Like it was funny in Canterbury Tales, you know, when they would use the word cuckold. And but now it's so politicized, you know. You can't say that word without people thinking that you believe a certain thing, even if you don't. But so yeah, this guy says that he bets that I'm like sniveling and so happy that he wasted his $6. And I just responded, hey, give me your PayPal. I got you. I don't care. I don't want you to spend money that you don't want. I'll refund you. And I did, because he so expected me to like be so happy that someone conservative didn't like my book, when really I don't give a fuck, you know?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't like the book, that's fine. You don't have to like hate me. I don't know you. You know, I don't know you. I don't want to steal your money. The money it's not going toward me. I took a loss because I gave you the money back that I didn't make.
Right. That's right.
Just to prove you wrong about me, because you don't know me, you know?
Yeah.
It's I want everybody to just kind of take a deep breath and like, look, try and make comics that can sell and people will read. That's one side of the bargain. And the other side of the bargain can just be just don't feel crappy about spending your money. If you think you're going to hate it, don't hate buy things. Just don't buy it. And then and then that we can kind of meet in the middle. You know, people can try and do good work. People can buy what they want, and then everybody could be happy in rainbow and beer. Not in Marvel's universe, apparently, but other places.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, other universes. Yes. But to follow up, Pat, on this topic, because I mean, we know a lot of people in comics. We know of even more people in comics trying to make it and this and that, and you know, it is tough balancing some of that, because it does seem like hyperbole is king on social media.
Yeah.
And somehow everyone is working on the greatest comic they've ever done in their lives, and they just signed the most important, groundbreaking contract that they'll ever get for the third time this month. Yeah. And you know, I think as a writer, you're personally aware of your own work. You know when something you've written is the best thing you've written. You know when something you've written is something that you did the job, you got paid, you did what you had to do, but it's not necessarily going to be revered 5,000 years from now by aliens. You know, like you're able to manage that, and I feel like that's a problem. Is managing confidence and egos and stuff like that, and like how do you get through all of this with the very large workload of published writing you've done?
It's very difficult, because you know, me personally, I'll say I have the philosophy where I'll take any gig that I feel is morally sound in certain ways, where I feel that I can write a story that isn't going to make me seem a certain way that I don't want to make it seem. Like, for example, I feel that I can mostly take any story and make it my own.
Sure.
One thing I turned down was it was this story about a a rogue preacher who was killing sinners, you know? And I was just like, there's, you know, he has to be the hero, and I can't do that, you know? Yeah. Like, I can't do the Punisher, but he hates people who don't read the Bible, you know? Like that.
Sure.
that was one unique one where I couldn't find how to do it. There are other things that I turn down when the money isn't good enough. But mostly my philosophy is take the job that feeds the family. This is a very hard industry to get gigs in, and that I've actually been criticized and subtweeted about before, that I will take gigs that have explicit nudity, like, hey, buddy, come on. Like, for example, I did work with Boundless, and Boundless is Avatar, right? It's a branch of Avatar where they do explicit violence and nudity in the books. And I did this one arc on a book called Lookers. It was Lookers Ember, and there were like sex scenes added to the book after I wrote it, but overall, I was comfortable with my story there. I found a story, I found a way in, I found a way to care, and that if people gave it a chance, they would see that reflected in the book. And I think that people are, I think that people almost try too much to value certain work less than others. Like, they'll see that kind of a gig as a lesser gig, and if they take it, they'll take it with shame.
Yeah. Terrible way to go into a job.
Yeah. And I take it with pride that I'm finding work in a field that it's difficult to find work in, and that I'm able to tell. I mean, I was on that book for 11 issues, and I got to tell a story that I thought was super fun to tell. It was, and I valued that I wasn't really given that much notes and direction throughout. So looking back on that, I value that in a different way than my creator and stuff. It's so hard to quantify it, because obviously, like, when you say that that you're doing your best writing, I do try to do my best writing on my creator on stuff. And it's, it's two things. Like, my value over certain things changes over time. Like, for instance, right now, Destiny New York #1 is coming out through Black Mask in it's Saturday in like 4 or 5 days, and I'm very excited for it. But at the same time, when I put it out, I can't not tell this is the truth. My thought is, wait till they see what's happening now. Wait till they see what's happening in volume 4, because I've already written and produced 4 over 100-page volumes. So my thought is like, oh, they'll like this, but they're gonna fucking love where it goes. So I think that, that's how I should feel. That I think, because that if a story doesn't improve over time, then why are you still telling it?
I could make a lot of sarcastic comments there, but yes, I agree with you completely.
It's time for me. It's time. Like, I do have a hard time with not thinking that what I'm doing now is the best, because I try to make what I'm doing now the best. But the luxury of time is that it shows you what works and what doesn't. Like, for example, at Zenescope, Raven Gregory and I, we were in love with this story called Unleashed. It was this event that took place in almost every title, and the main series shaped into these 6 oversized issues, and then it had 5 spin-offs, it had 1 prequel, and 4 tie-in series. And the truth was, it was so fun to write, and it was epic and grand. And looking back, there's a lot wrong with it, There's a lot that I wish that I could have made more streamlined. Like, it wasn't a great idea to do our issue 0 as a prequel and then have that continue in a different series and have the main issues 1 through 6 be the main arc. It was sloppy in structure, but good in content. But we just asked too much of the reader, who was, used to just standalone issues. We took a huge step there, and it was narratively very fun. But looking back is when I go, oh, that's what was wrong with that. Now I can see that. But in the moment, I was like, oh, Unleashed is the shit. And in some ways, I still feel that. But I can see how it's less the shit in other ways, you know?
Yeah, no. And that's a rare thing to hear because, you know, I feel like a lot of people would just publicly at least say that everything they worked on is the greatest thing ever. And it's nice. It's refreshing to hear those kind of takes.
Yeah, I mean, I see people share with pride their comic book roundup scores. It's like, bro, you're the episode of Black Mirror. Like, you have a score as a person.
Yeah.
Like,
it's weird and it's unnatural and it's all the wrong things because half the people giving those scores are compelled to give a high score because they got the comic for free as a comp, and if they don't, they won't get free comics anymore, and then they'll have to pirate them like everybody else. And what are you going to do?
I assure you, there were plenty of people who did not feel obligated to give She Said Destroy a good score. So.
it happens. Yeah, I feel. No, it's true. It's I felt the same on Breathless. I felt the same with Snap Flash Hustle. Where like, I think, and this is a problem not only with comics journalism but with niche pop culture journalism, is that there is incentive to churn out articles. There's incentive to be a very fast reviewer, but I think that most creators, I think that you'll probably agree with this. You can tell me if you don't, but I think that most creators write in a way where they don't want their work to be breezed through by someone who's looking for what's wrong with it. They want it to be absorbed, read, and then if you're going to rate it and rank certain things, reread it and look for nuance so that your review isn't full of things that don't happen in the book, and so your review doesn't reference things as not existing that are explicitly in the book. You know?
Yeah.
I would hope so. I don't know. I would hope most people would want that. I guess.
I feel like these reviewers, in many ways, don't really read the entire book. They really breeze through it, and I think that shows in the reviews where certain things just seem fishy to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and since you brought up your work at Black Mask, you know, we talked about Zenescope and all that. Like, how's it been? You know, I've done some stuff with Black Mask too. So how's working with Black Mask been? Working with Pozzolo, you know, your work output there. How do you feel about it? I
love it. You know, Pozzolo. It's so fucking funny to me. I was actually just thinking this. Like, I used to be very intimidated by him in this way, a very specific way. I felt that he had a great chance for me that I didn't want to blow, because he recognized me at a time when I wasn't really being seen as a serious creator by the industry, when I would put my run on Robyn Hood against anyone. And that's me looking back at that book, and I still feel that way. And it was looked at as like this like porny book, but I was doing things in that book that I think people didn't really give me credit for. But Pozzolo did. Pozzolo, I met him very briefly at a party at New York Comic Con, and I was feeling down at the party because I met him. It was very brief, and then I went outside and I felt like I didn't belong there. And who actually gave me the opposite feeling is Cena Grace passed me outside, and he recognized me and showed me love, and that was very, very nice. But I didn't feel the same from publishers. I didn't feel the same from editors. I didn't feel that I was being taken seriously as someone who was looked at as like the quote unquote Zenescope guy. And then the next New York Comic Con, I saw Matt at his Black Mask table, and he said, "Oh, Pat," and I was mind blown. He remembered me. He knew who I was, and he registered my surprise. He goes, "Oh, we met right at the party," and I was mind blown. Mind blown, and that made me intimidated because I didn't want to ruin that impression. So I wanted to keep the conversation going. I wanted to pitch to him, and it took a long time, but he ended up DMing me one day after some in-person pitches, and he was like, "Got anything?" And I sent him like 20 ideas in one big email, and he took 3 of them, and one was Breathless, one was Snapflash Hustle, and the other was actually a sci-fi book that we haven't done yet, but we will.
Nice.
And yeah, since then it's been great, and it's just so funny that I used to be so like worried about like my impression toward him, but like now he's cool enough and enough of a buddy where like if I ask him a question and he doesn't reply, I'll send him like the knife emoji, you know?
Yeah.
and like just like that casual like back and forth is what I always want. Like at Zenescope, Ralph Tedesco is still a good friend of mine, and so is Raven Gregory. And I like that I feel casual with them, and I feel that I've made a bond beyond writing, and that is how I feel with both Black Mask and actually Josh at Devil's Due. You know, I feel supported as an artist with them, and also I feel like I could really just kind of like fuck around a little bit too, and that is my process. I want to be able to like, I hate the idea of a creator-owned book where I'm like, I'm just talking to someone through emails. They're giving me like cold notes, and I'm like fighting the notes, trying to not apply them, as opposed to like, I can get on the phone with Matt, Ralph, Josh, and talk to them one-to-one in a respectful manner, but in a very casual manner about the books as if we're partners. And that, in my experience, is pretty unique in comics. Who actually is that way too, not even with creator-owned, but William at Avatar. You know, he's that way about freelance work, which is crazy to me.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah.
So I just want to remind everybody, so you do have this book coming out this Wednesday, which I'm not sure exactly what will get posted, but I'll make sure it gets posted before Wednesday, so people should check it out. So at Black Mask,
yeah,
you know, and then how your creator-owned stuff. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about it. You've done several campaigns. How do you like? Yeah. So you've used exclusively Kickstarter, or both, or Indiegogo and Kickstarter, or what? What are your thoughts on that?
I've used Kickstarter exclusively. That is one of those things where, you know, it's like these words. You know, Kickstarter is seen as like the legit comics industry platform, and Indiegogo is seen as Comicsgate, when that's not really true. Like, if you step outside comics, in film, you have both. And there's no political divide there. I would not use them, but I just I tried Kickstarter first. I'm more familiar with them. I like the idea of all or nothing, you know, because the truth is, like, if I do Indiegogo and I need 20,000 and I get 11,000 and I get the money, I'm like, you know, that's trouble. That's trouble. So
that's people's styles, right? I've talked to other people who say that's the reason why they would use Indiegogo, is for that exact same reason. It's kind of about the style. I'm like you. I would struggle if I got if I put out a budget for myself of a certain number, I got half that, but then I get the money anyway. Good luck. That would be I would lose my mind. But I know other people know how to do that very well. So you know, it's kind of all style. But how what do you think of this platform? There's a lot of. It feels like that too has also gone through a little bit of a journey where crowdfunding was bad and it was good, and then maybe it's a savior of the industry, and then it's bad again, and now maybe it's okay. Like, what's your take?
It's hard to say, because like I don't want to be like, thanks COVID, you know, but
sure,
but there's a surge right now, and that's just true, you know. There's a surge with everything in this way. There's a surge. I mean, I collect Pokemon cards. It's going insane right now. Sports cards going insane. Comics, not as much, but crowdfunding is going insane. That part of comics is. Because people like the idea of two things. Of one, buying a thing from home and having it come to them. you know,
especially now.
Yeah, that way you don't have to go out. You don't have to have an argument with someone who's not wearing a mask. You know, it's just it's become more valuable to more people.
Yeah.
Then two, people like and have always liked the idea that they're part of something. You know,
Right.
It's why people will go to a Patreon and, you know, maybe for $5 you get your creator to give you an extra podcast or YouTube video. For $20 they'll say your name at the end. You know, like it isn't that much of a difference, but you're part of it now in a more meaningful way. And people like that, and it is blowing up. And I think that it's such a weird thing because in many ways COVID has made things so much more difficult for creators like me, you know, where I had a problem with Destiny New York Volume 4 and Prison Witch Volume 2. They sent me pictures of the books. They exist in January. And they've been in the United States at a port.
Yeah.
Stuck because the port's been shut down and it was so weird for me. Like, I try to be sensitive about all this stuff. And I think that I'm a very intuitive person and I try to see how people feel about certain things, but I got the word that it was shut down from COVID. They sent me a news article in February, and it was like the first week of February. And last week I wrote back and I was like, listen, I don't want to be an asshole, but it seemed as if everyone at the port could have gotten COVID, quarantined, been cleared to go back, got COVID again, quarantined. What's going on right now? Like, what's happening? You know? And they got back to me and said that it's more than just that. Like, there's closures, but now the books are free. So it's hard for me to understand because the people who are being impacted aren't really always there to answer you. So it's been made more difficult that way, but it's also been it's opened up a new customer base. And it's hard to look for a positive in something so negative, but it's less of a positive and more like things are changing and things have to change in this. It's such a huge changing point.
I really want to hammer down this point though. You have you do, it's more than just your crowdfunding a book. You have a publishing arm as Space Between Entertainment. You've successfully funded and fulfilled over a dozen campaigns at this point, right? And you know, I talked to you about this before, but like, it's crazy to me that people are always out there being like, look at all these people crowdfunding and look at these people who are making this success. And they usually bring up, you know, the big names and not without reason. I mean, you know, what Spike Trotman's doing with Iron Circus is incredible. The people doing like Check Please, like that romance sports comic that they've cleared like over $1 million between like 3 campaigns. I mean, it's crazy what they're doing, but you are doing what everyone wishes they could do when they talk about crowdfunding, which is have multiple campaigns a year, all successful, all more or less pretty smooth sailing. You get the books, you ship them out, you do your own fulfillment. I mean, that's a lot. And I think a lot of people in this industry wish they could do what you're doing, and they don't talk about you enough.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I can't say that I don't feel the same way. You know, you know, I felt the same way through Zenescope. You know, people were asking mainstream creators to do things in comics that I was doing because I wanted to from the start. You know, and Kickstarter. I feel the same exact way. I feel that I'm blessed in this way though. I do have to say this. Destiny New York Volume 1 was a struggle for me. That campaign, it funded about like 1,000 over the goal, but Now looking back, $20,000 for my first campaign is a very lofty goal. You know,
yeah, it is.
It was, it was thanks to certain things like this. Like my family helped out a lot. He might be even mad for me saying this, but Jim Campbell, the letterer, on the last day, he gave a nice donation, and it was that donation that put us at the top of trending, and then we blew up, you know, because like people saw, oh, this is trending, it's the last day, boom, let me donate. And without that help, we wouldn't have gotten it, I don't think. And then we did Cloudsters Volume 1, and then from that point on, when Destiny Volume 2 came out, that got immediate support. And that Volume 2, which got well over the goal, showed me what I could do here, and showed me that I have to expand beyond a couple of campaigns per year. Because the truth is that people are so scared to not have every campaign fulfilled at once. Like you do a campaign, fulfill it, do the next campaign. That leads to such slow progress, you know?
Oh, yeah.
If you hold Marvel to the same standards, what they needed to deliver issue 1 before accepting money for issue 2 from Diamond, like that's never going to work. You know, not Diamond anymore, you know?
On multiple fronts, that doesn't work, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, we hold ourselves as independent creators to a higher standard when we should be held to a lower standard, you know? Like we need more help. We aren't a big corporation. So my philosophy was, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'll do 4 or 5 per year, and I'll fulfill. And as I fulfill, I'll do more. I'll keep it going, you know? And if one campaign struggles, that will be helped by the next campaign, and so on and so on and so on, you know? And I think that me seeing it as more of an ongoing thing rather than a hit, you know? Me trying to make it into a more well-oiled machine is what's different about what I do versus
making it into a business. Yeah.
I try, you know. I mean, it's very difficult. I could, if it wasn't all plugged in, I would show you guys my downstairs. I mean, it's a castle of boxes, you know. I have a storage unit. It's a whole thing, but I want Space Between to be the books, podcasts. You know, it's crazy. What we were actually for a while getting more known for as a company than our books was we would do these reaction videos, and like we had a pretty decent following, and my goal was to amass that and then point them toward the books. But the truth was, it was just, you know, as you said, I don't use any like backer kit, none of that kind of stuff. It's all me. So when it comes down to it, I don't have enough time for all of it, but I also haven't, to be real, accrued enough funds to have that much help, you know? I mean, honestly, there have been, besides the freelance artists and writers, Space Between has largely been myself, my wife, Amy, our editor, Shannon. We had a podcast host, Ryan Fassett, who actually, he's the only person besides me who has co-created a title for us. He did Modern Dread. And to be real, the one who was helped with other stuff is you, Joe. You know, you helped bring books in like 3 or 4 times. And the truth is, I don't really ask people to help that much because I like the idea of doing it my own. But I think that it would be a strength as we grow to get more hands on deck, you know. But as is, I do try to make it just me.
But you're also doing this full time, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
So that's huge. I mean, the way what some cynical people out there have made it out, where they would hear a story like that and then would expect you to be like, oh, and then I work, 9 to 5 at the office while I'm also doing this. But you're making this work.
Yes.
And that's huge.
You have a new campaign coming out very shortly.
Yeah, it's called Smoke Weed, See the Future. It's a spin-off of Destiny New York. It's about a seer named Taylor Hart. She develops a strain of weed that allows people to see what she sees. She sees visions of the future, so she's creating this therapeutic service that allows people to see limited glimpses of their coming future.
Nice. And yeah, like Joe said, this is a full-time job. This is what you're doing. You're successful. Lots of campaigns. People should take note of a lot of successful campaigns. Yeah, lots of questions out there right now about how do we do it? How do we get out there? How do we break into this or that? I think they just need to learn from you.
Thank you. And I mean, here's something I actually need help from you guys. I find that my messages, more than ever, in the past, my most common message was, "Can you hook me up with blank?" Right? Like, I would announce, for example, my first Marvel novel. "Oh, I have a great pitch for the Hulk. Can you help me out?" It's like, bitch, I want to write the Hulk.
Yeah.
Like, why,
absolutely.
Why would I do that? But now, my messages have gone away from people wanting my direct job and more me wanting to work for them in like, "Oh, what is your advice on my Kickstarter?" And that's fine. That's fine. There's a certain amount of people I appreciate it from, because what it does is it shows me that people see the value that I bring and the knowledge that I bring. I value that less when it's like someone who hasn't done any of the work, right? Like someone who doesn't know, for example, like, "Oh, what kind of rewards should I do?" And my advice is, do what I did, in that you sort campaigns by most funded, most successful. You see what people bid for, pledged for, and then sort by popular now and see what's working now, right? Like, that part isn't that hard. So I do kind of resent when I get asked questions like that, because it's like, I probably ask dumb questions too, like
sure.
But I feel that personally I learned more from observing, and that is important because it shows that you've done the homework.
Yeah, that's a lost art. Yeah.
What I want to know though is this: I do want to eventually do a book that is like, I kickstarted blank projects. This is everything I learned from that. So something like that, What number of campaigns do you guys think would be appropriate? Because I was thinking like 20, 25, but what number would you think is appropriate to do that kind of book? Because I don't want to be a guy like, I don't want to say any names, but there are guides to the craft that are published by people who have not done enough to put out a guide about the craft.
Yeah, there's one I'm thinking of right now who had a whole seminar course you could sign up for that had done 2. And one of them had failed. So, if it was me, I mean, I'd be telling you, I'd say 2025 is the right number. I think that 25 to 100, that quarter number.
Yeah. 25 sound like that. There's something about that number, like 25, that I think like stands out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a big number. What I liked about Zenescope is they treated 25, 50 as these major milestones. Like, for issue 125 of Grim Fairy Tales, I wrote like an 80-page script, and they were like, "Yep, okay, cool." That
used to matter. Like there was a whole business. It doesn't used to matter. I mean, once again, I think Europe and manga, especially manga, very much celebrates 25, 50, 75. That quarter number matters, and they make money off of it. Go figure. But
I mean, again, you successfully funded and done this for over a dozen campaigns already that have already been funded. I'm not even including the ones that you're getting the books in and you're sending out soon. Written literally hundreds of comics, edited literally hundreds of comics. You've written novels. There are people out there who haven't done a fraction of that, who talk a big fucking game.
Yeah, that's true.
and would dismiss, creators like you, let alone me. Obviously, they dismiss that, but like even creators like you, and they got nothing, and it's like, what the hell's happening?
Yeah, they've got a bibliography of mean tweets.
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, the comic industry is booming, and everyone is on extremely stable ground, so they can do that.
Absolutely.
It makes sense. No, 25. I mean, sure. But honestly, I think it does. People do need to kind of. It needs to resonate with people that hundreds of comics you put out, books, worked with all major companies. I mean, it is not a enjoyable feat to work with Disney Publishing. I mean, they're I'm sure lovely people, but that's not the easiest gig in the world to work with them.
Oh no, it's not. I mean, I can't even. I mean, can I say this? Yeah, I can. All right, so the amount of work I've done for Disney, the actual amount dwarfs what you've seen. They're a company where they have so many different licenses out where. Like, for example, I've done multiple Disney villains comics that you'll never see. I've done Disney princess comics that you'll never see. And I mean, some exist, some are out there. But they're a company where they can throw money at stuff and then be like, no, we're going to move the license over here now. And then those books don't happen. Like, I did an entire Zootopia graphic novel, and that's I don't even know if that's Disney. It could be DreamWorks. I don't even know.
That's Disney, yeah.
All right, so Disney. I did a full graphic novel, did immense edits. The company goes away, and then Disney just doesn't bring the book elsewhere. It's crazy. It's crazy. So they are very difficult to work with, but they're also, it isn't a negative thing. They are just, the bigger the property, the more that's going to happen.
For sure. Disney, this isn't an insider secret. They had a published strategy for a while when they would make games, especially when mobile was starting to become a platform that they cared about, where they were going out and they were soliciting a dozen or 24 companies to make the same game. And one game won, and 23 games got killed. Everybody got paid, but it's like that is part of what these companies do. The key here is you've worked with a lot of major things, put out a lot of product consistently, run your business like a business. Do not have maybe the bibliography of mean tweets, so that's good.
Yeah, I try not to. There's certain experiences that I look back on at social media, and I regret certain things, but I think that is how it should be. Is that you should look back on mean things and regret them,
yes.
For example, like there was a trending video it was this big thing where I think female astronauts did something for the first time, and the only guy among them he was I mean, now it's funny, he was wearing a shirt that had like a spray paint style like bikini girl, and
I remember this now. Yeah.
And I tweeted about that was disrespectful, and I got some comments like, "Oh, but you work for Zenescope," and my response was, "Yeah, but I'm not talking about like, oh yeah, these are the first female creators to do this, and that. Here's my titty shirt," and then the next day, like the guy got so many of those comments that he like said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. This is my wife's favorite shirt of mine. She got it for me. I love it. I'm sorry." And he was crying, and I'm just like, the fucking balls that I have, like why? Yeah. Like, it's not different from Zenescope. It's not different from any of that. But I looked at that moment and I saw. I mean, back then I saw what I thought was disrespect that I commented on, but maybe I saw my own self-doubt about what I was doing at Zenescope. And I saw that in someone else, and I lashed out. And I look back at that, and I'm like, I shouldn't have done that, And it's like,
I think this introspection disqualifies you from being in comics.
Yes, you're gonna have to stop now. Unfortunately, you get too much empathy, too much introspection. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Pat, I just kind of to wrap up. We try. I do these about 2 hours. It's what are people. But I wanted to just we mentioned before you have a new comic coming out this Wednesday from Black Mask. You've got a new campaign starting up. Smoke Weed, See the Future. Yes. You have lots of other campaigns people should check out, if for no other reason than to see that how successful campaigns were done. Yeah, because check out the history. You also have this book, the Disney Villains Portrait of Evil.
Yes.
And that's coming out this summer, right? In July.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
How else can, and obviously a massive library on Comixology that I'm looking at right now. Plenty of ways to read your work. How else can people connect with you?
All right, so I'm on the Devil's App Twitter. I'm at Pat Shand. I am on Facebook, Pat Shand. I'm on TikTok, dude. Pat Shand. I'm nice. There. I use it in open packs of Pokemon cards. I keep it very light. I'll do some raps about stuff like
excellent.
Like for example, I realized that the Popeyes, Popeyes had been added to Uber Eats, so I did a song lamenting how I was going to gain so much weight.
Nice.
And that has since happened.
Thank you, Coach. Yes.
Yeah. And, I have a new newsletter. It's called let me see. I would have been a comedian if I didn't have a stutter. And that is through Tiny Letter. So you can go to tinyletter.com/Pat Shand, sign up for that. And our podcast, Space Between Podcast, is coming back to YouTube soon. It's on a season break now.
Cool.
Oh, but dude, it's so fucking funny. Our planned return episode was Emmy and I are gonna open these Buffy cards, and what a time, what a time for that. We're still gonna do it, and yeah, that's that.
Check out the links. There'll be links in the description, depending on where you watch it. YouTube is a terrible platform in the sense that I can't put in those channel markers like I like. But you look at the description of the video, you can see all this stuff. If you're watching this on iTunes or Pandora or wherever you are, you'll see descriptions there. Go follow Pat Shand, subscribe, get involved in his work, and go check out some of his comics. It's you're an awesome guy. I love what you're doing. I love your story.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great.
All right. Well, hey, thank everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you later.